Chef Donna here, and welcome to Everyday Homemade. Everyday Homemade is designed to teach you the basics of cooking, all the while making something delicious and homemade for your family. Today, I'm going to be using butternut squash, and it is currently fall time, so I think nothing says fall more than butternut squash. I'm going to be stuffing it with some sausage, quinoa, some spinach. So it's going to have a nice tart, kind of salty, sweet thing going on. So I think it's quite delicious and your family's going to love it. So let's get started. Anytime that you're preparing a recipe, you always want to look to see, what is the longest cook time? What do you need to start first? So first we need to cut this in half and then roast it in the oven for about 45 minutes. So it's going to take a while to soften up. So you need to get that in the oven right away. So we're going to go ahead and get it cut in half. It's going to kind of stab it there in the middle, bring it around, and then just cut it right in half. And then we will scoop out the seeds. First thing I'm going to do is drizzle a little bit of oil. I have my baking sheet here. I'm just going to put my finger over the hole a little bit and just drizzle some oil on top of the butternut squash that we just cleaned. I'm going to add some salt, not a ton, just a little, and some pepper. I'm going to flip these over and we're going to get them in the oven to get roasting. The next thing I want to get started is the quinoa. Now I have a half a cup of quinoa in here, but you always want to rinse quinoa. It has a bitter type of flavor in it, and if you don't rinse it, that'll end up in your dish, and you don't want that. So I'm just going to give it a good rinse and make sure it's all nice and clean. All right, drain it a little bit, drain it. And then I'm going to put it right into my small sauce pot. I'm going to add 1 cup of chicken broth to the quinoa we just rinsed. I'm going to let it cook for about 20 minutes. I'm going to start it on high and then reduce it to low once it starts to simmer. I always like to use chicken broth in place of water when I can. It just adds more flavor development. My pan is coming up to heat. You can feel it, it's nice and warm. It's been sitting on high for a couple minutes. I'm going to go ahead and add some oil. And then we're going to add in onion. Has a nice sizzle to it. I'm going to add the onion and we're just going to get this to brown up a little bit. Sweat out the onion so it's nice and soft. So the onion is starting to soften, so I'm going to go ahead and add some garlic and let that cook for a minute. You can see that my quinoa is up to a boil. I've turned it down. So let this garlic cook for a quick second, and then we're going to add the sausage. So now we'll add the sausage. I'm just going to break it up kind of with a spoon, although I have this fun little gadget that kind of helps break it all up. And I want to cook this until it's no longer pink. Let me get it kind of browned up. So we're just going to let that cook for a few minutes there. So my sausage is cooked through. I'm going to add the spinach. Now, spinach, it looks like a lot, but it'll wilt down to next to nothing once it kind of gets the steam in there and gets cooking. Now that the spinach has all wilted, we're going to add the rest of the ingredients that we have. So I have some cranberries. This is minced sage, fresh sage. It's nothing like fresh herbs. some garbanzo beans, and this is the juice from one orange that I squeezed. So we're gonna go ahead and add that in. I'm gonna stir it all together and then season it with a little salt and pepper. Another little trick for quinoa cooking is to let it sit covered after it's absorbed all of the chicken broth. I just move it across and I just let it sit, and this allows it to get really nice and fluffy. It's a great little trick to know. So it's been sitting for a couple of minutes, and I'm going to go ahead and add it into the sausage that we have here. So I'm going to stir it all in, and then the only thing we're waiting for now is the butternut squash to come out of the oven. So now I've added the quinoa. You can see how fluffy it looks because it sat just a few minutes with that lid on. And the cranberries are kind of plumping up a little bit. I added the orange juice in, so I just want to cook it for a couple minutes, just simmer it till some of that orange juice kind of evaporates. You can see it there in the bottom of the pan. But I don't want it to be like extra wet, so I'm going to let it dry out for a few minutes here. So I went ahead and hollowed out one of the butternut squash, so I'm going to just go ahead and do this one really quick. So now I'm going to stir the butternut squash all into this mixture we have with the sausage, and then scoop it right into those shells we have. All right, here we go. Scoop it right into there. Load it right all up in there. And I'm going to make sure we fit all of this filling in here. This is a very filling fall dish. Look at that. Isn't it beautiful? Now I'm going to add some almond meal. Just sprinkle it kind of over the top. You could use breadcrumbs, but almond meal is always a nice, like, gluten-free alternative. So we're going to get these in the oven, and they're going to bake for about 25 minutes on 350 degrees. So it's been about 25 minutes, and I just turned it on to broil, and I just want to brown the top a little bit. So if I don't want to walk away, I don't want my topping to burn. So I'm just going to stand here and kind of keep an eye on it for a couple minutes. So you can see how it's browned up a little bit. I can't wait to dig in and have a bite. Just gonna get a little scoop out here, some cranberry and garbanzo beans. I love this dish. I absolutely am such a fan of butternut squash. It's always been one of my favorite vegetables. So let's see, I had to get a cranberry, sure. Super tasty. It's kind of nice and crispy on the top. And the sage in the sausage really comes through, really nice flavor. And I love the little bit of cranberry, and then the quinoa gives it a nice texture. Today, you learned that roasting vegetables deepens the flavor of the vegetable, versus boiling it. And always, always, always rinse your quinoa before you cook it. It'll get rid of that bitter taste. And leave the lid on, and that'll make it nice and fluffy at the end. So if you like this video, I want you to go ahead and like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. And until next time, keep it homemade every day. Talk to you later. Bye.